My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 42 years old, I work in insurance compliance, and I've been married for 12 years to a woman I thought I knew. I never imagined I'd be sitting in a television studio, under the relentless heat of stage lights, with microphones clipped to my collar and strangers watching me unravel in real time. But that's exactly where I ended up, on the set of Family Therapy, a show I never even liked. I used to make fun of it, honestly. People airing their dirty laundry for ratings, spilling secrets they should have taken to a therapist or a priest. And then one day, my wife, Juliana, asked if I'd go on the show with her. Said we needed help. Said she couldn't talk to me anymore without one of us shutting down. I agreed. Not because I liked the idea, but because I loved her. And I thought, naively, maybe arrogantly, that whatever demons she had, we could face them together. Fix them. Like we always had. I was wrong. What unfolded in that studio wasn't therapy. It was a revelation. A bomb. And I was the one standing too close when it went off. Before the show, before the betrayal, before the unraveling, I really believed we had something rare. Juliana was incandescent in ways I never knew how to explain. She had this quiet magnetism, the kind that didn't shout but pulled everyone toward her anyway. You'd notice it at dinner parties, the way people leaned in when she spoke, how her eyes always stayed a second longer than expected when you talked. She made you feel seen. Heard. Important. And she did that for me, every single day for the first 8 years of our marriage. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party. She was the one in the corner, swirling her wine, watching the room with an amused sort of detachment. I asked her what she was thinking, and she said, that half the people here are lying to each other. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was true. And she saw it before I did. That was Juliana. She saw things. And I thought she saw me. Really saw me. The beginning was beautiful. Uncomplicated. We made each other better, or so I thought. She challenged my passivity, and I grounded her volatility. I was a man of structure, schedules, policies, account balances. She lived in color. Music in the kitchen, art shows on Sundays, wine at lunch, just because it's Wednesday. I needed that. And she said she needed me. We bought a little colonial in New Haven with a fireplace that never worked and a garden she swore she'd learned to tend. We fought about dinner tiles and made up in the paint aisle at Home Depot. We'd have people over for wine nights, and they'd always say we had great energy. We were that couple people envied. The ones who made it look easy. It wasn't perfect, of course. No real marriage is. She hated my job, thought I was wasting my mind in spreadsheets and compliance reports. I hated how easily she dismissed stability, how she chased passion like it was oxygen. But we navigated those fights. Found our way back to each other, again and again. I thought that meant we were strong. I mistook survival for intimacy. I confused silence for peace. When we had our daughter, Mira, things changed, but not in a way that worried me at first. Juliana threw herself into motherhood like it was a performance, crafting baby food from scratch, enrolling in Montessori groups, writing little poems for Myra's lunchbox by the time she was 4. She was radiant. And exhausted. I remember this one night, I came home late after a regional audit, and found her asleep on the floor beside Myra's crib, a half-folded blanket over her legs and a copy of the bell jar open on her chest. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and her toenail polish was chipped, and I swear to God she looked more beautiful than on our wedding day. I stood there for 10 minutes, just looking at her. Feeling lucky. Feeling like I'd somehow won at life. That memory's burned into my brain now. Not just because of what it was, but because of what came after. Because somewhere along the way, she stopped meeting my eyes when I walked into a room. Somewhere, she started looking through me instead of at me. And I did what I always do when something feels off. I rationalized. She's tired. She's stressed. It's just a phase. I told myself things were fine because I needed them to be fine. I was the provider. The constant. The man who made sure the taxes were filed and the fridge was stocked and the water heater got replaced before winter. But somewhere in that predictability, I must have stopped being the man she loved. Or maybe I stopped being the man she wanted to love. Either way, by the time she told me we were going on family therapy, part of me already knew. The part one never let speak. The part that whispered to me in those long, quiet nights when she rolled away from me in bed and I stared at the ceiling, pretending not to feel cold. That part already knew something had broken. But even then, I never imagined how far it had already fallen. The first real shift was so quiet I almost missed it. It was a Tuesday morning. Rain streaked the kitchen windows, and Mira was trying to convince me that socks were a form of oppression. She was 5 and indignant. Juliana stood at the counter, absently stirring almond milk into her coffee, wearing that faded Bowie shirt she used to sleep in before she started wearing silk camisoles to bed. I asked her what time she'd be back. She didn't look up. Late. I have dinner with a donor. I remember pausing, fork in hand, Mira mid-rant about sock autonomy, because she'd never mentioned any dinner. Which donor? Juliana sipped her coffee. One of the Arts Board trustees. Thomas something. From Stamford, I think. That was the first time I heard his name. I just didn't know it yet. Back then, I didn't question her. I trusted her. But that night, when I kissed her cheek before she left, her skin was cold. And she didn't smell like herself. She wore a perfume I didn't recognize, sharp, floral, aggressive. The kind you'd wear for someone new. Someone you want to impress. She used to wear something softer. Vanilla and sandalwood. Something she'd picked because I once told her it reminded me of autumns in Vermont. She said, "You noticed the weirdest things," and wore it every day for 3 years. But not anymore. She came home after midnight. I was still up, reading through claim audits in the den, the glow of the desk lamp the only light in the house. I listened to the sound of her heels on the hardwood, waited for her to come in and tell me about her night like she used to. She didn't. Just went upstairs. Quietly. Like she didn't want to wake the life she was walking away from. I sat there for an hour after that, the air thick with questions I didn't want to ask. In the weeks that followed, the pattern continued. More late nights. More vague explanations. The cold shoulder disguised as exhaustion. Intimacy has become a planned affair, once every other Saturday, if that. And even then, it felt administrative. Like paying a bill or changing the water filter. And still, I didn't say anything. Because men like me, we don't blow things up. We manage. We control. We wait. But the silence was getting loud. One night, she left her laptop open on the dining room table. A rare mistake. She was usually careful, always closing windows, deleting messages. But this time, she'd been in a rush. I wasn't looking for anything. I swear that. But I walked past it, and something caught my eye. An email subject line, last Thursday night. I clicked. It wasn't graphic. Not overt. But it was, intimate. Familiar. Casual in a way that betrayed history. The email was signed, T. I didn't recognize the name, but I recognized the tone. It was the way she used to write to me, before Mira, before the mortgage, before the years started to stack like unopened letters. And suddenly, every little thing started to rearrange itself in my mind. Like those puzzles Mira used to play with, the ones where you slide the tiles around until the picture makes sense. Except now, the picture was devastating. A man named Thomas. Board trustee. From Stamford. I sat down at the table. My hands were shaking, but not from rage. From something worse, recognition. Because a part of me had already known. The cold bed. The careful lies. The way her body had become a locked door I didn't have the key to anymore. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't even the intimacy with someone else. It was the quiet contempt. The way she looked through me. Like I was a placeholder. A memory she hadn't figured out how to erase yet. That night, I stood at the foot of our bed and looked at her sleeping. She was curled on her side, hair spilling across the pillow like ivy. Peaceful. Or pretending. I wanted to shake her awake. Ask her who he was. Ask her how long I'd been living in the shadow of someone else's touch. But I didn't. Because I was afraid of what she'd say. And more than that, afraid of how calmly she might say it. Instead, I walked downstairs, sat in the dark, and started writing a list of questions. Not for her. For me. When did I stop being enough? Was it the job? The dad bod? The way I stopped noticing new earrings or lipstick shades? Was I boring? Was I invisible? The list kept growing. By sunrise, it was a page and a half long. I never showed it to her. But I still have it. Folded in half, tucked in my sock drawer under an old watch she gave me on our 5th anniversary. A watch I no longer wind. Because time stopped meaning anything the day I stopped being hers. The morning after I found the email, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called in sick. Juliana was already gone. She'd started leaving the house earlier, before the sun was fully up, before Mira finished brushing her teeth, before I had a chance to ask the kinds of questions that require answers. I listened to the silence of the house, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the birdsong beyond the kitchen window, Mira singing to herself in the bathroom, and I sat there at the table with a cold cup of coffee and a feeling in my chest like something had torn and not yet realized it was bleeding. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I didn't even know what I'd say if I did. What I needed was truth, undeniable, unspinnable, irreversible. And so I started looking. I began quietly. Carefully. I went through her side of the closet, her drawers. Not like a thief. More like a man trying to prove himself wrong. I kept hoping I wouldn't find anything. That I'd open a drawer and discover nothing but old scarves and lipstick tubes and feel foolish for ever doubting her. But in the back of her nightstand, tucked beneath an old appointment journal, I found a receipt. A boutique hotel. One night. A suite. The date? The same night she told me she had a migraine and needed to sleep early. I sat there on the bedroom floor for a long time, turning the paper over in my hands. It still smelled faintly like her perfume, the new one, the one I never liked but never said anything about. That was the moment it hit me, this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a phase. It was a life she was living without me. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Not yet. I wasn't broken. I was sharpening. That afternoon, I called an old friend of mine, Marcus DeLeon. We'd gone to college together, lost touch for years, then reconnected when he'd become a private investigator. I remember joking once, over drinks, that I'd never need his services unless I lost my mind or my wife. Turns out, I lost both. Can you be discreet? I asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. I'm not in the business of burning down houses, Nate. I just opened the doors you've already knocked on. 3 days later, he emailed me a folder. Photos. Timestamps. Logs of calls. Restaurant bookings. 2 trips to that same hotel. In the pictures, she looked lighter. Laughing. Her face tilted toward him, her hand on his chest in one. I stared at that image the longest. There was an intimacy in the gesture I hadn't felt from her in years. It wasn't the sex that shattered me. It was the closeness. It was the fact that she gave to him what she used to save for me. And it wasn't just once. It had been months. At least 5. While I packed Myra's lunch and fixed the back fence and laid awake beside a woman who told me she was just tired, she was building a second world where I didn't exist. I didn't sleep that night. Or the one after. I'd sit on the edge of our bed, watching her breathe, wondering what face she wore when she was with him. Did she laugh the same way? Did she run her fingers through his hair like she used to with mine, whisper things in the dark, tell him secrets I thought were only mine to hold? One night, I found myself in Myra's room. She was asleep, her small body curled beneath a mountain of stuffed animals, her nightlight casting stars across the ceiling. I sat beside her and watched her sleep. Watched her chest rise and fall. She stirred. "Daddy? Shoo. Go back to sleep." But she didn't. She blinked her big brown eyes at me, the same eyes she got from her mother, and whispered, "Did Mommy hurt you?" I froze. "What?" "I heard you crying," she said. "Last night." A crack formed in my voice. "I'm okay, baby. Just a hard week." She nodded, like it made sense. But then she said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes I hear her talking to someone else. At night. In the kitchen. When she thinks I'm asleep." My stomach turned to ash. I kissed her forehead and tucked her in. But the moment I closed her door, I leaned against the wall and sank to the floor. Not just because I was betrayed. Not just because I was unraveling. But because my daughter saw it too. The lie wasn't confined to our bedroom. It was in our walls. In our air. It had seeped into every corner of our lives like a gas leak, silent, deadly, and slow. I started noticing everything after that. Her voice lifting when she got a text. The sudden care she put into her outfits. Her phone always face down on the counter. I became a ghost in my own house. Watching. Listening. Dying in pieces. I wrote letters I never sent. Rehearsed confrontations in the shower. Practiced what I would say when I finally forced her to admit it. But every time I looked at her, I didn't see a villain. I saw the woman I married. And that was the hardest part. Because I still loved her. Even as she buried me alive. It happened on a Sunday. We were in the kitchen. Juliana was making French toast the way Mira liked, extra cinnamon, too much powdered sugar. The smell reminded me of quieter years, back when Saturday mornings meant coffee and bare feet and the kind of laughter that comes from feeling safe with someone. But none of that laughter lived here anymore. I watched her from across the counter. The way her wrist flicked as she whisked the eggs, how her hair was pulled back with a silk ribbon I didn't recognize. She looked beautiful, like always. But distant. Like someone had drawn a line through her heart and only half of it still lived in this house. Mira was upstairs, playing with a neighbor. It was just us. And I knew. I knew it had to be today. She slid 2 slices of French toast onto a plate, set it down in front of me with practiced ease. "Here. Eat before it gets cold." I looked up at her. And for the first time in months, I didn't look away. "Who is he?" She blinked. A pause. Then, "What?" My voice was quiet. Steady. Deadly still. "Don't insult me, Juliana. Just tell me who he is." She stood there, the spatula still in her hand, the skillet hissing behind her like it could feel the heat rising in the room. Her mouth opened. Closed. And for a second, I saw it, something flickering behind her eyes. Guilt. "His name is Thomas," she said finally. No embellishment. No denial. Just the sound of a world ending, quietly. "How long?" I asked, though I already knew. She looked down. 7 months. I nodded. My hands were clenched under the table, knuckles pale from holding on. Does he know about me? About Mira? She hesitated. He knows I'm married. To me? I said. Or to the version of me you edited for him? Her jaw tightened. Don't do that. Don't do what, Juliana? Don't be angry. Don't ask why you lied to my face for almost a year. Don't call what this is a betrayal. What would you call it? She didn't answer. She just stared at the floor, breathing hard through her nose like she was trying not to cry. But I wasn't done. Did you love him? She looked up. No. Did you sleep with him? That one landed like a slap. Her shoulders dropped, and she turned away from me, back to the skillet like she could hide behind the sound of burning butter. Yes. The room was silent except for the sound of that yes. I stood. My chair scraped across the floor. She turned back around, and for the first time, her voice wasn't calm. You want me to say I'm sorry? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I couldn't keep pretending. Pretending? I asked. My voice cracked like ice. Pretending to be what? My wife? Myra's mother? A decent human being? That's not fair. No, I cut in. You know what's not fair? Coming home from work and finding you already asleep because you spent your passion somewhere else. Looking my daughter in the eye while knowing her mother is halfway in love with a man she's hiding like a secret drug. That's not fair. She stepped toward me. You think this is just about sex? You think I wanted this? Then what did you want? I asked, nearly whispering. Her face twisted, pain, rage, grief, all crashing into one. I wanted to feel like me again, Nathan. Not just the mother, or the wife, or the person who files tax returns and folds socks. I wanted to be wanted. To be seen. I saw you, I said, my voice breaking. She shook her head. No. You saw who you needed me to be. You loved the version of me that didn't need anything. That didn't get sad. That didn't ask you to stop hiding behind routines and responsibilities. And you didn't tell me, I said. You chose silence. You chose lies. Because I didn't think you'd hear me, she said. We stood there, locked in a silence so thick it felt like drowning. I was shaking. I didn't know whether I wanted to scream or collapse. My hands were clenched, breath shallow. And then I said the one thing I never thought I'd say to her. You need to leave. Juliana blinked. What? You don't get to stand in this house, in this kitchen, and ask me to keep pretending. You made your choice. Now you live with it. Her voice dropped. And Mira? I swallowed. You'll still be her mother. But you can't be my wife. Not like this. She started crying then. The quiet kind. The kind that comes when the fight is over and all that's left is the wreckage. I didn't touch her. She went upstairs. Packed a bag. I don't remember what I said to Mira when she asked why Mommy was leaving. I just remember her small hand gripping mine as we stood at the front door, watching Juliana drive away. And just like that, the house was quiet again. But it wasn't peaceful. It was the sound of grief. Of a man standing in the ruins of a life he built with someone who stopped wanting it. The first night without her was the hardest. Mira cried herself to sleep. I held her in my arms, whispering soft reassurances I wasn't sure I believed. That everything would be okay. That Mommy still loved her. That none of it was her fault. When she finally drifted off, I sat in the dark of her room for a long time. Listening to the sound of her breath. The way her hand curled around my shirt like she was afraid I'd disappear too. I didn't sleep that night. I walked the house instead, every room a memory. The kitchen where we once slow danced to Nina Simone at 1 a.m., laughing like teenagers. The hallway where she hung Myra's crayon drawings in cheap plastic frames. The back porch where we'd planned our future over a bottle of wine, what we'd name our second child, the cities we'd travel to, how we'd grow old. I sat on the porch swing until the sky turned blue again. Until birdsong returned. Until I could tell myself I'd survived the first day. The days that followed blurred together. I cooked. I worked. I picked Mira up from school and helped her with homework. I kept us afloat. But everything felt different. Not broken. Not anymore. Just stripped bare. Like the house had finally stopped pretending. I started therapy. Not because I was falling apart, but because I didn't want to. I needed to understand why I stayed silent for so long. Why I allowed the weight of "okay" to replace the intimacy of truth. I told the therapist, I feel like I spent 12 years holding my breath, and she said, maybe now it's time to exhale. Mira asked questions. Not always directly, but they came. One night, over dinner, she looked at me and said, "Is mommy bad now?" I set my fork down. No. She's still your mom. People can do hurtful things and still be people. Do you still love her? I didn't lie. A part of me always will. But love doesn't always mean stay. She nodded, too wise for her years. Okay, she said. I just didn't want it to be because of me. That was the moment I broke. Not with anger. With tenderness. I pulled her into my arms and held her like she was the last honest thing in the world. It was never because of you. Never. A few weeks later, Juliana and I met at a park to talk. It wasn't a confrontation. It was quiet. Honest in a way we hadn't been for a long time. She apologized again, not just for the affair, but for leaving before she actually left. I was disappearing piece by piece, she said. And I didn't know how to stop. I think I was too afraid to ask where you'd gone, I told her. We talked about Mira. About holidays. About therapy. About time. And when we parted, it wasn't angry or cruel. Just final. Like the closing of a chapter that still deserved to be read, even if the ending hurt. I wouldn't say I was healed. Not yet. But I was healing. I started running again. Cooking real meals. Playing piano late at night, the way I used to before responsibility crowded out melody. One morning, I caught my reflection in the mirror and thought. You're coming back to yourself. Slowly. Painfully. But surely. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to be alone. Because alone didn't mean lost anymore. It meant free. I used to think love meant endurance. That if you just held on tightly enough, through distance, through disappointment, through betrayal, you could make it last. That love was a test of patience, and strength was staying when everything inside you begged to run. But I know better now. Love isn't what holds you hostage to someone else's silence. It's not the act of shrinking so another person has room to grow. And it's not forgiveness without change. Real love, the kind that endures, is built on truth. On presence. On choosing one another, again and again, not out of obligation, but out of joy. Juliana and I didn't fail because we stopped loving each other. We failed because we stopped seeing each other. I thought I was being a good husband by being steady. By holding the line. I took pride in being the anchor, the constant, the safe harbor. But sometimes, when someone says they're drowning, they don't want you to hold them in place. They want you to swim with them. Or at the very least, notice they're struggling. I didn't. And she didn't tell me. And the silence swallowed us both. But here's what I want to say, to anyone still holding their breath in a house filled with unspoken words. You are allowed to outgrow the version of yourself you built to survive someone else's indifference. You are allowed to want more than being the one who holds it all together while nobody holds you. And you are allowed to walk away, not because you gave up, but because you finally saw your own reflection and realized how long you've been fading. I didn't write this to cast blame. I'm not a victim, and Juliana isn't a villain. She's a complicated woman who made devastating choices. And I was a good man who stayed too quiet for too long. Both of those truths live in the same house. Mira asks fewer questions now. She's adjusting. Some nights, when I tuck her in, she still asks if I'm sad. I tell her, sometimes, yeah. But being sad doesn't mean we're not okay. It just means we remember what mattered. We still hang her drawings in the hallway. The house is quieter now, but it's not empty. It's peaceful. There's space here, for music, for healing, for whatever comes next. And maybe that's the greatest thing I've learned. Sometimes the life you build collapses. But the life you build after, that one's yours. Fully. Finally. Free. If this story lived in your bones, friend, if it rang true in places you haven't let anyone touch, just know you're not alone. There is life after betrayal. And it's not a lesser life. It's a truer one.